I came so close to quitting 3D printing and YouTube altogether, and it's all because of this shed. Sit down, brothers and sisters, grab a cup of tea, and let me tell you all why this shed was both my biggest regret to date and also the best thing that's happened for this channel. But first of all, why did I even get a shed in the first place? My little nerdling is getting older and more curious, and the safety aspect of resin 3D printing around little hands has been a bit of a concern for me and my wife for some time now. Coincidentally, while I was finishing this project, Midwinter Minis, one of the Goliaths of the Warhammer YouTube space, released a video on his journey into 3D printing, and not to spoil his video, which you should watch after this one, he had the same concerns as me with having the printers in the house with kids and animals. I had taken some precautions, like making sure the printers were hard to get to, but with this whole channel's content based around 3D printing Warhammer models, I needed them to be both easily accessible and filmable. Getting an outdoor space has been one of my goals I set myself for last year, and ambitiously, I wanted one of those garden rooms. You know, the ones that are like big fancy sheds with insulation, electrics, the whole shebang. But the problem is, they cost a lot of money. So that was out of the question, and actually I had sort of written off getting an outdoor room for the time being until Black Friday sales came around, and for some reason a local place that sells sheds had some on offer. So I took a gamble and ordered this 6 foot by 4 foot chalet style shed for a grand total of 520 Great British pounds, or $650. Now, I don't know if that's a good price. It seemed to be the cheapest on the site, and it might have been cheaper to DIY, but I have absolutely no idea how to even start that. Never mind, find the time between working full-time, doing YouTube, and having a family. Now, the shed was done. It was time to get the printers up and running. But this was also when the temperatures in the UK plummeted to -degrees Celsius. I did, however, have a plan to get around the low temperatures. I had bought and built a plastic cabinet from IKEA, which cost all in a very nice £69 or 90 freedom dollars, with the vision of having both the frozen Mega 8KS and Mighty 8K in there. And hopefully with the heat of both of the printers running, it should passively heat the enclosure as well. But I must have measured the printers and the inside of the cabinet wrong. This is yet another reason why I didn't build the shed myself. The Mega 8KS is huge and it takes up most of the cabinet. So now I was left with a difficult choice because I really like the Mighty 8K. It's an absolute workhorse of a printer and has been the feature of many of my videos. However, I also just took delivery of Uniformation's GK2, which I'll be doing a video on shortly, and the shed being only 6 foot by 4 foot means I don't really have enough space to have the Mighty 8K in its own enclosure, while also having the Mega 8KS in one, and then a place for the wash and cure station as well. So unfortunately, the Mighty 8K has been placed into a temporary stasis inside a locked cupboard. I, however, managed to mismeasure the printer again when I was picking out the right IKEA cabinet to use, and it was too tall. So I removed the feet, which are secured in with some hex screws, and now it fits snugly inside. At this point, the outside temperature was -2 degrees Celsius or 28 freedom degrees, and the inside of the shed was a cool 0 Celsius or 32 freedom units. Obviously too cold to print with, so the next step was to heat the printer, and originally my idea was to only heat just the fat using a brine thermal band. I had already purchased one of these thermal bands and it fits the Mighty 8K fat perfectly, but it's nowhere near big enough for the Mega. I don't know if it's worth buying another one and possibly overlapping them, or if I should just try and heat up the entire enclosure. My biggest worry with overlapping the bands is creating little overheated pockets or damaging the bands themselves. So after an evening of research, the next purchase I have to make is this small 500-watt ceramic heater. I found this awesome website, which I'll link down below, that shows a lot of tests someone more knowledgeable than me done using a resin printer and a ceramic space heater in an enclosure. But the long and short of it is, basically a 500-watt heater should be more than sufficient to heat up the enclosure and therefore the resin inside the vat. So I also ordered some reflective foil that normally goes behind radiators to coat the inside of the enclosure. In the meantime, I cut out a small notch out of the bottom of the cabinet to fit the cables in cleanly. I originally was going to cut a hole into the back like I had done with the old enclosure, but this way of doing it made more sense because heat won't have as much space to leak from, although I will admit it isn't the most aesthetically pleasing, but I'm more of a function over look kind of guy anyway. Lining the enclosure took me maybe an hour or two, and I wish I could have got some footage of me doing it, but it was too cramped in the shed with everything lying around. I basically cut the radiator foil to size and used the double-sided tape that came with it to stick it to the sides of the cabinet, and then sealed around the edges with this aluminum foil that I had from making a DIY curing box. Aluminum? Aluminium? I done this the last time. Aluminium. Why does that sound fucking weird? This enclosure working is the most important part of the shed because without it, I can't print during winter and the colder months. In fact, I actually ran a test print on the Mega and the print enclosure actually reached 30.5 degrees, or 30.5 degrees Celsius, which is way over the target of 25, but still within the safe range for resin. It kept this temperature throughout the entire print, and originally I was going to include the print into this video, but it's so epic and needs its own dedicated video. So make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell because it's the start of a huge project I have planned. Back to the shed, however. I have my FDM printer in there as well, and I've been printing different pieces for the shed with it on the floor. I also realized now I didn't record any footage of this, but it's in the way all the time, and because heat rises, the floor is always going to be the coldest place. And I honestly didn't realize that FDM printers preferred warmer temperatures like resin. I just naively thought because of the hot end and the heated bed, they can overcome any external temperatures. Not to mention, my curing station is on top of one of these IKEA trolleys and it's too big and bulky. So to kill two birds with one lac table, I used the old lac table that I bought last year for the resin printers. However, the curing station from Frozen is too tall to fit under the lac table, but that's not a problem because thankfully there are STL files for lac table leg extenders. This one I found says it extends it by 50 millimeters, which is perfect because then the curing station will be able to fit underneath. So roughly 8 hours later, and I had my new feet and they were super easy to install. They just slide onto the bottoms of the legs, and I think you could screw it in if you want, but I didn't. And luckily I didn't, because it turns out I either measured wrong, very likely, or I didn't account for the depth of the leg going into the extender, also very likely. So I stretched the part in a slicer to make it 120 mils tall, and this should be 100% should be enough. It should be. Again, roughly 8 hours of printing later, and I had ran out of filament on the last one. I had left it overnight and only went out to check the print quickly before starting my day and was met with a half-finished one. No big worries, I thought. I'll just turn the printer off because it had been going full blast with the fans and the heated bed all night, and I'll start it back up again later that night when I got home from the office. If you FDM print, you probably know where this is going. The bed cold right down, and when the print started again, it insta-failed and pulled itself off the bed. Never to be defeated, I loaded up some blue PLA Plus filament and printed off the last leg. After taking off the old ones and installing the new, taller, better versions, it still wasn't tall enough. Again, it's very likely I measured wrong. So it was just a smidge too short, and to save another 8 hours and however many grams of filament, I removed the legs off the curing machine and stuck some of these small felt pads that I have laying around to both keep it off the floor and make it easier to slide in and out as needed. But with the curing station under the table, the layout is so much better in here now. I can almost say the Manufactorum is complete. Now it's just going to be decorated like a normal shed, I suppose, with some shelves on the walls, which reminds me, I printed off this really handy dust collector for when you're trilling, and I'll link it down below for you in case you're going to be trilling anytime soon. But now I have a problem which I need your help with. I have a Scadis pegboard already from IKEA, and I've also printed some smaller pegboards to make use of the wall space, simply because the floor space is tight to say the least. However, there are these cool honeycomb storage wall parts that look really interesting as well. But what I want to know is, which one do you think will work better for this shed? I'll be printing all the parts as I see them come into the comments, and I really value your opinions. Also, is this something you'd want to see in a future video? Let me know. After you've done commenting, make sure you watch this video next, because before I done all this shed work, I actually 3D printed 1000 Def Core of Kriegsman and learned some lessons along the way. As always, I want to give a huge thanks to all my Patreons and channel members, because without your support, I wouldn't be able to do projects like this. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I'll see you all in the Discord.